Alright, so I watched most of our first game of week 2 against Hentai Haven, right? So, I just wanted to take a little moment to talk about a specific concept, rather than just play by play going over the entire thing. Just a little essay, if you wanted to call it that, like a video essay, whatever you want to call it. So you guys got ahead marvelously, played very, very well, and in this case, you are at a point where you would win if you essentially play according to sort of the basic ideas behind the comp. If you go with basic strategic options with no excellent execution or outplays and no big creative setups like that were very well thought out, very high level anticipation or whatever it is, right? Then you would win because you're ahead. And if you're ahead, you naturally snowball, right? So Hentai Haven is then, in that case, in a position where they need something to happen, some big event to happen. And what that means is that in terms of risk management, it's the same thing as Warren Buffett, right? It's like if he does nothing and makes very basic investments with very, very low risk, he gains millions and millions and millions and millions, and he's absolutely fine with that. If you are, if you're almost broke and you're like, well, I got 10 pennies to spend, and you don't really care about losing them, but you might as well just quadruple them in value if it's like, let's say 50-50, right? That sounds pretty good, right? If it's 50-50 for Warren Buffett with $50 billion worth of assets, and it's 50-50 whether he'll quadruple it. Obviously, he'd rather just sustain what he has right now, right? Because the value that you gain is logarithmic. That's the same thing in the league. The value of getting 5k ahead, let's say at this point in time, you're 1.4k ahead. If you were to get another 1.4k, that value is vastly smaller than if you were to lose 1.4k at this point. Because if you lose 1.4k, your entire lead is demolished. If you get 1.4k, well, you only just you like doubled your lead, but you'll by that point the gold values will have gone up, so it won't actually have doubled in terms of how significant that lead is. So really, you're looking to sustain your lead and safely but slowly expand it as the game goes on. And the second point here that I want to make, besides that risk management that we just talked about, is converting the lead. So right now you only have gold. You're now very, very clearly ahead. Like, it doesn't take a lot of takedowns to be able to start converting in certain places. So having a 1k gold lead is more than enough to start doing that. That's almost 10% of the gold value, or more actually right now, that you have at this point. So that is called a significant lead. That means you want to be expanding it, or not expanding it, converting it, besides making sure you maintain it, right? And converting in this case, well, Ocean, how significant is Ocean? Not that significant. You'd like to get it, but it's not extremely high value. What you want to do is find a place to get plates, find a safe opportunity to get dragon control. You want to have control over the area around the dragon. Take the dragon. You want to get plates, and you want to eventually also get Herald. And this red buff on the enemy team is spawning. You'd also like to get that as well, because Nocturne is level 6 somehow. He farmed quite well, so that is your biggest threat right now, right? That is, in terms of risk management, all you're doing right now is thinking about where that next ult is going to be, and your objectives are laid out ahead of you quite clearly. So in this case, what that means is, if you think about what
use any of them,
Hentai
you can see the lack of
position
very safe.
Is you see here, this is a moment in the lane where neither side has pushed, and Jarvan is playing up in river, but neither side has priority. Right now you can see that Jarvan is
really well played, and it's been a permanent freeze from some steps, and Reverse has held that lane all the time between where you see it now. It hasn't moved, and they've
so right now
not been able to exert any pressure because they just haven't had the vision of where Jarvan is. Any point they could be ganked, they've had to play very safe. And it looks like they're going to show
up. But then Destiny draws back to behind the mid lane, which means that we no longer have any vision on where Lux is potentially headed into Fog of War. Now, on one hand, in general, I really like to see that when there's nothing to do in lane, you're not unnecessarily playing very far up and staying ahead of sort of ahead in lane, and then Nocturne ults and you die. So really, in general, this is very good. I'd rather see this play being defaulted to than not. However, in this situation, it's slightly different. Because if you coordinate with McGuff, like stay near mid lane, right, then you can play up and essentially protect each other, right? That's what you're doing in that case. Like, Jarvan needs protection and you need protection, right? So you just stay close and coordinate it that way.
Put out now and go to back, but you can see the lack of pressure that they've had.
So now you head back and you notice Lux isn't in this wave, right? So this is where all red flags should be risen, because honestly, you guys are just outnumbered right now, right?
Revelio's sitting on 3 biscuits. Really, he hasn't had to use any of them.
Level 6
there's just been no damage dealt to his lane.
There we go, the Paranoia is used though, and McGough, can you escape this one? No, you can't. Nightmare Thor gets his first kill of the game, and the Viking wins. Will get locked up eventually. There he goes, a kill going over. Double kill for Nightmare Thor and Revelio.
Because we're playing up in a situation where they have the upper hand. So they got a very temporary sort of spike in terms of an opportunity to get something done. Like an opportunity spike, you could say. Not a power spike. You could call it that, but really it's just, it presents the opportunity to get something done. And if they were to waste that, the chances of you getting an opportunity to kill them in like 2 minutes of time is very big. Very big. Especially in this elo, but even in general, just in general, yeah. Something's going to happen in your favor very likely with that Jarvan EQ combo. Getting you an opportunity to do something on the map every 10 seconds. Right, while Nocturne has to sit and wait for his ultimate again. So your plan in that case would be to safely push out the lanes, safely scout out the Nocturne, and await your next moment where his ult is down. He has to use it, right? If he doesn't use it and leaves it up indefinitely, I mean, honestly, there's gonna be body counts somewhere, right? Like, this Lux shouldn't be able to keep laning against Nico. We are doing quite fine in that regard. We have weird lanes, like we have a Vayne Morgana, which is very strange, like, duo. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when combined with a Jarvan. Like, that is very strange. Gnar with Jarvan into Renekton is also very strange, but Pickles is just performing absolutely excellently. So, like, in terms of draft, it makes no sense, but the execution speaks for itself, right? So obviously, if you do something that in terms of theory of draft doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but then you perform well on it and you show, I can play this because I'm more skilled than my opponent, obviously, who am I as a coach to say, no, you can't do that because it doesn't make sense from a drafting perspective. I mean, the game is played by players, not by coaches drafting champions, right? So this is absolutely fine. So let's just keep going.
The faster way, he is now fleeing. We'll see if he can survive this one under the Tower of Delight.
Now, the reason what I don't like about our comp is that we have a very proactive jungler, but we don't have a very proactive bot lane. Ideally, a control bot lane synergizes well with control junglers. Right, if you have like a Karthus stealing camps in bot side jungle and making it very hard for the enemy jungle to access bot lane, right, then that works very well with, let's say, Caitlyn Morgana. You have this siege going on, you're getting plates, and a Karthus comes in and controls the enemy jungle. And then potentially you can start 4-man diving because there's just nobody to protect the bot lane. And you just very slowly whittle them down and get turrets that way. But we don't have that comp. We have a Jarvan, so it would be nicer to see, let's say, Nautilus or Alistar or whatever, like an engaged support. And then the AD carry doesn't matter as much. Really, it isn't as crucial. Vayne can do fine facilitating ganks. Even though Vayne is not the strongest laner, she can still facilitate ganks just fine.
That's not gonna run under the tower and risk his life there. Nightmare Thor also throwing out a few abilities, but unable to put a kill on Bane, but 2 kills now. Going over to anti-heaven, but the Gnar! I think with a huge, but that is the ultimate being used by Renekton there. Mojo keeping himself alive under that tower, but forced to use that key cooldown there, meaning he's now going to be kind of under the wrap. Oh, Mojo, he's going back in. He's going to see if he can get the kill. Can he get the alpha? Yes, he can.
This is like the Renekton combo does about 600 to 700 damage when you get a
key cooldown there.
W. Otherwise, it's more like 500 damage. So
meaning he's
in this
now
case, you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 650. So you got to realize that you need to kite the Renekton when he does this. Like you got to E right over here, and then he only hits his W, which is by far not enough to kill you. That's like 300 damage or something.
Kind of
right, so you see, this is like 250 maybe.
Oh, Mojo.
Then the Q is like 300.
He's
and then he dashes, which is like 50.
He's gonna see
one more auto
get the kill. Can he get the alpha?
Low,
yes, he can. Shut down once again going over to Mojo.
So you can see
2 kills
combo,
for him now. They've both been shut down.
It's like a
it means that gold lead is now in
one
his
of those few
favor.
things that you can just calculate.
Great knowledge of the champion there. Knows that even though he can go and take that trade, gets the huge heal from his Q. And just Pixelman either didn't respect it, didn't know well enough. He died with the flash up there.
But this is the danger of Gnar is that ideally you would want to get plates and choke him out like a control top laner, just like you got Caitlyn Morgana with lower kill potential and higher potential to just take plates and suffocate a top laner, the enemy laners. That kind of situation happens with Gnar as well, where, let's say if you look at Gnar in competitive pro play, you see very low kill counts, and you see very consistently turrets being whittled down in conjunction with like some jungle presence, right? Some controlled jungling presence. So really, if you think about it, Gnar is a laner that functions very well when the junglers are lured to the enemy side, right? To the opposing side, I mean. So let's say that you have an Octar that needs to ult bot lane all the time. That works very well for Gnar. And it also works very well against tanks rather than the bruisers like Renekton. But if you are up against Renekton and you can make it work by playing better, then it's crucial that you try and make sure that you don't get into that position where you even drop the amount of HP that you did. Let's say you didn't die, but you drop your health bar and you give up control over the lane. That's kind of the situation you want to prevent. Because you do poke damage and you can prevent him from getting his all-in on you, right?
Really well played
so
from
that would be your number one priority.
And the reason it looks to get that, it's more down to the CS.
Look at this now, the score is back to
he's had a lot more control over the lane than before. He struggled to get.
And this is due to two things. Mainly. So first of all, you have to realize the enemy has the initiative every like 2 minutes to almost guarantee a kill somewhere. Just look for a kill somewhere and get it. And then we have to play around that. Because it's so obvious, it makes it slightly easier to strategize against it, right? War is deception. If you cannot deceive your opponent, defeat is almost certain, or whatever Sun Tzu said, right? It's like if you know where your enemy is going to strike, then it's incredibly easy to counteract it, right? And that is the same thing with the Nocturne who hits level 6. You know he's gonna ult somewhere, you just don't know where. So all you have to do is figure out what he's gonna do, and then you can either make a cross map play or just counter
those last hits down, which is a bit unfortunate. You do hate to see it. Sometimes there are players in the Silver Gold League who are really, really good, and they just can't get those CS numbers down, and that can be so important as the final spot goes down onto Nestle's tower, just poking out this lane, trying to gain some pressure from
it always hurts.
Yeah, I mean, the CS difference I think stems from the early level 1 where Destiny Power just returned to his lane, got the whole shove in, able to hit level 2 early. Nightmare Thor working through disadvantage and obviously that kill. He's done alright for himself, being, say, 20 CS behind, but
like stone carver, maybe that's professional stone carver. You know, if you make one micro error in terms of like your motorics, you have wasted like 20 hours of work. So you can imagine the kind of person that needs to do that, right? And it's like he said, like, my father always told me and learned this to me from a very young age. Pay attention to what you're doing. If you strike the hammer, don't just strike the hammer and be like, you know, nice weather outside. No, actually look at it, look at where it's going, look at what you need to do, how much force you need to use, everything, right? Pay attention to it. And that's the same thing with like minions. It's like, I can never coach someone on minions and tell them something they don't already
players
know about
gets
them,
down,
right?
which
Because
is
it's
a lot more control over the
simple
lane.
concept, but the
Thor
biggest thing is pay
struggled to get
attention
some of those
to
last
where the minions are targeted, how much health they have, how much damage those hits do, how much
hits
damage your
down, which
abilities
is
do.
a bit
It's really about focus and
You do-
about accuracy, right? Like you see that it's like 250 HP here, this cannon minion or whatever it is, right? And you know that an auto attack plops it for like 150 like this. So you know, like it's got such a big. I would never have guessed. I don't know about you, but I would never have guessed that this.
Unfortunate. You do hate
That this cannon here, that you can auto it from here. You need to wait for at least one more cannon hit. You could literally. This cannon could tank 2 more hits from the enemy cannon, and then you could auto it if you needed to with like a LeBlanc. Since you have more auto attack damage, right? You could just wait for 1 hit. But there's nothing in my mind that would be like, let's auto it here, right? Because then the next cannon hit will
players in the silver.
and this one as well, you know this minion's gonna get targeted by the cannon and by those casters in the back. So boom, boom, and it drops.
Really good, then they just can't get those CS
So you
numbers
lose
down.
like
That could
100
be so
gold
important
just
as the
from
final
that.
spark
And you
goes down.
can imagine 100 gold in one lane. If everyone plays like that, you could lose 500 gold based on random micro errors, right? Just like not paying attention to the exact values in like half a minute. 500 gold is a lot, right? Or let's say if you just distribute it along the lanes, it's like 300 gold. But that's a lot. Like that's a lot. I mean, the gold differences have been like 1k. 1k was like an accumulation of a whole bunch of kills and events happening all over the map several times, right? So that was like the result of the entire game snowballing in one direction for a bit. So 300 gold is still a lot at this stage. That's like
He's now just poking him out this lane, trying to gain some pressure for himself.
Yeah, I mean, the CS difference, I think, stems from the early level 1 where Destiny Power just returned to his lane, got the whole shove in, able to hit level 2 early. Nightmare Thor working through disadvantage, and obviously that kill. He's done alright for himself, being one where
Destiny not really setting up plays in mid lane.
Really fortunate. You do hate to see it.
In this situation, when someone isn't managing, like what should Lux be doing here? Ask yourself what Lux should be doing, right? You need to time slow pushes. Right, slow pushes, it's like the way it works is very simple. You need to make sure that a wave stays rather close to the center, and then once you realize you have time to shove it into the enemy turret, you can do so. And then you start shoving as hard as you can, right? In this case,
because of the fact that like
Lux is already
mechanically he has to fight to really get
relatively
that.
hard.
More down to
Look
the
at
CS differential. Destiny's Power has had a lot.
This is a crucial blunder in this lane, right? Because now the enemy wave, this wave is already at the tier 3, right? Over here, like it's already getting in here. But in the meanwhile, this wave is now chunked out pretty heavily. So what's going to happen is this is going to travel down a little bit, and then it's going to stagnate, but it's not going to be pushed. That would be a moment where you know you can gank this Lux, right? Especially since she has flash down. Every single wave you should be, can I gank? Can I gank again? Can I go to Nocturnes, Raptors, get another angle on Lux and gank again? Right, okay, go back to the other side and gank from that direction. There should be no way that there should even be a pink ward in this lane, because you should constantly be oracles over the regular wards and clearing out a pink wards. Put a pink ward of your own perhaps. Shallow pink wards, very unique like that is like what I call stratagem. It's not like a common tactic or common strategy, it's just a little abusive tactic applying to this particular situation, because the gank on Lux is like the only initiative you can take on the map to get takedowns and get
love the lane, Nightmare.
Well, that is obviously exaggerated,
to get some of those last hits down, which is a bit unfortunate. You do hate to see it. Sometimes there are a few players in the Silver Gold League who are really good, and they just can't get those CS numbers down, and that can be so. Players in the Silver Gold League who are really.
So also, one thing is, like, if you play a mini game, right, and you see, let's say, you see things coming from a certain angle, that's just like if you play aim booster or something. See, I got a shitty mouse on this computer, so it takes me a long time to respond to things and actually move, right? Because I can't properly palm grip a mouse that is the size of my pinky finger, right? Like literally, it's literally as long as my pinky finger. Like, what is that? That's not a mouse. That is just a little cat's turd that pretends to be a mouse. Like, come on. right? And the thing is, if you have proper equipment, which is not that expensive, it's just like, you know, let's say you have a Razer mouse or like whatever, like some gaming mouse that fits in the palm of your hand. That's the main thing. It's not about what brand or whatever. The point is that it's a big mouse that fits in the palm of your hand, so you can grip it properly and steer it quickly, right? And the second thing is paying attention, right? Obviously, everyone understands how animations work and what they do. So again, that's not really something you can ever get coached on. It's just paying attention to the abilities and where they're going. Like you just
pretty good,
see
and
where
they just
it's
can't get those CS numbers down. That can be
it.
so important.
You
as the
can't just
goes down into
randomly lane. See, there's this thing called wiggling, but wiggling needs to be in one certain spot. You shouldn't wiggle back and forth between, let's say, like these two barriers of the lane, right? You should wiggle like between two very, very small segments of the lane. They're not wiggling is not designed to make you move across the lane. It's not designed to be spacing, right? Wiggling is just like hiding where you're actually going.
Unfortunate, you do hate to see it. Sometimes there are.
So when this happens, you should be inputting commands every single time. So let's say if I can give a demonstration with aim booster, right? If you're quick with the mouse, be careful, be careful. The quicker you are with the mouse, the more inputs you can do, right? And you should be able to click on a minion and then click on where you want to go. Let's say you should wiggle, click on a minion, and then keep wiggling, right? So you should be able to make those slight motions from the sides of your champion to a minion and then keep going. So if you instead have to sort of stand still and click, right, then you're limiting your spacing in the lane and essentially making it easy for your opponent to land every type of skill shot ever, right? So with this mouse, I don't think I can do a very good job because, let's be honest, this mouse fucking sucks. Yeah, this is not going to last very well. Yeah, this is absolutely horrendous. And you can see how much of an impact that's going to have. Like, I have played League on this computer for a few times, and I can just instantly notice my performance drops very drastically. Because I can't input as fast, right? I can't react to abilities as fast. I can't work down on the margins. If I know that I only got a quarter second for something, well, usually I know I can do that, but now I can't, right? So you can see how just the selection of my mouse, I just can't do it. I just can't be as accurate. I can't, it's impossible. It's impossible. I can't do it. Right.
Players in the Silver Gold League who are really, really good, and they just can't get those CS numbers down. That can be so important as the final spark goes down into the SCS poking him out this lane, trying to gain some pressure for himself.
Yeah, I mean, the CS difference I think stems from the early level 1 where Destiny's Power just returned to his lane, got the whole shove in, able to hit level 2 early. Nightmare Thor working through disadvantage and obviously that kill. He's done alright for himself, being, say, 20 CS behind, but maybe that's down to Destiny Power to find some good pressure as we see another fight.
Yeah, we do, and it's going to be around this Rift Herald. We'll see if they want to continue it. However, McGough and Pivotal are both aware of this one. And Destiny's Power will slowly but surely be walking his way up. So
they need to get this up.
And they defend this one as now. That comes in. Great cast onto the light. He's been locked out of this one. Oh, and a fantastic use of the Nico ultimate there. Going to lock down so many members. Pivotal is slain the light. Gets the shutdown going from Mojo too. And it's so huge. And it's looking like that Rift Herald is going to get secured as well for Sense. Despite the fact that they did not start it in the first place, huge win for them.
There's all Destiny's Power. They take the free leash. They take the Captain can kind of break that to give them a few more inroads into these side lanes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the side lane pressure that very much has been the story. For the side of Sensitive Reason, because they've been able to get that top lane turret down, the bot lane turret down, 2 dragons, a Rift Herald. But now it's time for them to clump up and group in the mid lane. I feel like there's even half.
Like Nocturne is, you know, backline diving, the most obvious backline diver in the entire game. So you would expect the other players, like let's say Renekton is also sort of decent at that. He has 2 dashes. It can get you a little bit out to the backline. That's fine, depending on what the enemy backliners are. But then look at what the bot lane is. Bot lane is like Braum is like disengage, right? Like it's not proactive, it's like counter engage or disengage, not like proactively saying I'm gonna press this button and I'm gonna engage. His ultimate is too slow to just be used as a pop it and engage. It's not an Ornn, right? Ornn and Braum ult have very different mechanics to them, right? So in that way, you could say that the composition on Hentai Haven's team is flawed because it's not consistent. There's no consistent notion of what the objective is. Like, are we diving backliners? Well, yes, but not really, right? Like, well, Renekton is like 5 out of 10 at it. Nocturne is like 10 out of 10. Lux 0 out of 10. Lucian and Braum 0 out of 10. It's like there's no clear compositional synergy on the enemy team. You could say, let's say if Nocturne was Karthus. No thank you. If Nocturne was Karthus, this composition would be quite consistent, right? Like you have a tank, you have like an early game bruiser, you have like some late game scaling, like you got a control mage, you got a little bit of pick potential, but not a lot. And you don't need a lot. Like you got that all-round like disengage comp, right? But you have like team fighting potential through your disengage, right? You got a comp that can go places.
But they don't want to do that because they still have this vein.
That's not really as clear. And on our side, we have like Nico Jarvan, which is very, very good, very sound combo, right? A lot of pick potential in that, a lot of early game potential in that, early to mid game. Then we got we got late game scaling, that's fine. We got a little bit of disengage control. And some more like, you know, kind of something that you can use as engage. So we got more potential to team fight and potential to make engages happen through the Jarvan with Gnar follow-up, Cataclysm, ult. You know, we got those fancy combos lined up. It's not a terrific synergy. It's not like stellar, you know, but it's definitely better than Nocturne Braum on one team. Like Nocturne, Lux, and Braum.
The silence is free. I feel like they keep pressing the silence to the point where they can get mid lane eventually. But they don't need to improve mid right now. I mean, they are going to, because they can. They have
because it's ARAM time, because no matter what, it's always going to...
Once this like kind of ARAMing is kind of senseless, right? I hope we can all agree that, I mean, we're not going to get anywhere if you don't have epic wave clear or epic sieging potential or epic pick potential. The thing that makes a siege composition, like let's say Caitlyn Morgana with some other guys like Karthus, so good is that let's say if you ever land a bind which has such long range potential, right, then suddenly you get a kill and you absolutely destroy the enemy, right? But in this case, it's like we have one bind, but we have no like
end up in an ARAM.
Real potential.
But I'd like to see them take it down, and then they can move towards this Baron. Like it's still a very safe position for Nightmare Thought to be in, despite being quite a way behind, especially in items. To say the Gnar, to the Bane. Can just hold out these waves, but if she's forced back towards the second tier tower, we can see Santa Capsule maybe look to get some Baron. Towards the second tier tower, we can see can just hold out these waves, but if she's forced back towards the second tier tower, we can see Santa Capsule maybe look to get some Baron.
There will only be times where I will stand corrected, and this is absolutely magnificent, and I don't feel like the enemy absolutely blundered positionally like it was super obvious. No, I don't feel like that.
Huge
So,
for
in
this
that
thing.
case, I must
Huge
stand
gold
corrected
spike
and
for the
say,
scaling 80
wow,
carry, and now there's a
the combo
7k
is
gold lead that's going to be
immaculate.
snowballed
The
into a
setup is very
Baron
easy to
buff.
pull off.
This is
no
all
reason
at
to
Great
one
anticipation
fight.
and foresight by the enemy.
No
to see
reason not
come
to do
and
it.
play
I mean, that
around
was a great combo. The Gnar into the Jarvan wall, into the pop blossom. Ravella didn't really need to do anything there. He just happily ate up all 4 of those kills. He'll put himself 1,000 gold lead ahead of his counterpart, despite his being a Lucian. And that's going to be a Baron buff. Let's see what they can get done.
Alright.
With this is they do base.
Well played, guys. Well played. Really.
This game, because right now,
Ideally, what you want to see, like when you have Baron, obviously the minions are granted immense power, so you are naturally sort of incentivized to to split push, right? To push several waves. So what you can do in that case is get people that can easily move across the map, like Gnar with TP, and Jarvan because he has EQ combo over the walls, to get all the 3 lanes set up, right?
And looking at the team
to one
SCS
lane
has,
later
all the
on.
goal advantages,
Nar can
objectives
certainly
to
split
score,
push
and it's
even if you
like,
keep the other 4 combined. Obviously, you're playing low risk here because you're very, very, very far ahead. So I would personally think it's a better idea to keep the 4 combined simply because it's easier to execute. So just to recap, like I feel like 4-1 is easier to execute, and that's why it's better. But I think in theory, 1-3-1.
I feel like it's better for them to
give
look
the
towards the next
potential
game
for a
because
larger lead. It's just
such a strong showing
to make a little misstep.
There are a few avenues I think they have left. You might be right that it might be time to just mentally retire from this one and see what you can do.
This is Baron power play. I cannot stress this enough. Baron power play is like a SWAT team racing through a building. You're just trying to clear out every room, right? You're trying to take down every turret. You're trying to get as much shit done in those few minutes as you possibly can. So I want to stress that as much as I can. No camps should take priority. Maybe you can pick a red buff up on the way, maybe you can pick something up, but absolutely not like a blue buff and just like while your team is already setting up.
If they can get a pick, maybe SCS spread out and try and play that 1-3-1 kind of comp, which the comp is built around. If this Nocturne pick, which was sort of a reaction pick, the last thing we saw,
clear out that vision and like clearing out that vision and establishing it in the top side, keeping that Lucian busy for longer, clearing out that wave. Right, like those kind of things have way higher priority because they promote the actual push with the Baron buff rather than just getting.
If they can use that to find a couple of kills in the mid lane, force a fight, and then get back to the side lanes before they lose too many towers,
would need to.
They can maybe wait out this Baron, but otherwise I don't see Nightmare Thor being able to clear waves. It would have been fine without the Baron buff, with that magic, because the minions getting the extra health. It's going to be tough for him to keep those away from the turret. Their one saving grace is that between the Vayne and the Nico, there's not too much range to actually damage those towers. So if Braum can sort of stand there in front and eat up as much damage as he can, they might be able to stall this Baron buff just long enough to
you guys
see if they can
keep doing what you're doing. Morgana in this case, if you're this far drawn back, you want to control the bot side jungle. If you're a control champion and you have a territory that the enemy needs to invade to cross over and try and catch someone, they need to make a play happen, right? So, and the way they make that play happen is by catching the group that is most vulnerable. That's obviously Pickles Man right now. The way they access Pickles Man is through the territory leading from where the group is right now to where Pickles Man is, right? So you want to you want to control that territory, which you can obviously do with control champions like Morgana, especially since you have time in your hands anyway, because you're not really participating too much in this push, as long as your group is that you belong to is
to fight on their terms, but that window is slipping with this early game comp.
You guys all want to proactively stand on towards the bottom side and
and the issue is the Gnar is just around the side there. They're going to try and take him down, and Pokemon is stunned up. But look at the mid lane, that's his power already, so he could have killed for himself. Pokemon outplaying, is stunned up.
Gnar flashes out. So this is really interesting, right? Because here, if you don't have a ward, right? Pickles doesn't have a ward. In this situation, you want to make sure that when I don't know when this enters vision. That's like the problem. So I'll just leave this up in the air for now. Okay, this is just what happens. So unfortunate.
Easy an MVP for this game. It has to be.
Because I don't know when exactly that gets 10, 1, and 5. It's really just decided.
Great use of that by Viking Wins. First goes over Revelio. He's positioning aggressively, but not able to secure anything else for himself.
Overall, I really feel like you guys had a very, very nice compositional concept in draft. I don't think it would be sufficient to win against better teams because you'd get crushed early on. Like, I think if you are playing, let's say this Renekton, it's like if you have a Diamond 1 Gnar player against a Diamond 1 Renekton player, that matchup is going to be extremely hard for Gnar. If you also have, let's say, a bot lane like Vayne Morgana, it's like Morgana into Braum, you can make it work. Definitely not a completely losing early game setup. But I would say that the Nocturne, if the enemy drafted properly, then let's say if they had Nocturne Nautilus or something, they would have way more initiative on the map in the 2 side lanes. And I gotta admit that's a little shaky, but it's like in terms of compositional synergy, if you look at all the aspects of draft, which is one is like your lane setups and jungle setups and how they combine with one another. Then the second part is your players being on it like comfort picks or power picks or whatever, right? And the right players being sort of advantaged by the draft at the right time. So let's say if you're good in the early game, you get an early game champion with a good jungler to make something happen early on. If you're like really like a beast in terms of consistency, right? You might want to get like a late game hyper carry and just consistently like just get CS, get damage in, survive, get kills, right? Like you get that kind of champion in draft. And then the third part is obviously compositional synergies, right? And that part is like absolutely excellent. You guys have a lot of comfort picks, great compositional synergy, and theoretically you would be losing like 2 out of 3 lanes, especially if the enemy drafted a little better. But overall, that is absolutely not too bad, because comfort picks obviously lead you towards a point where if you have good players, you might be able to win lanes based on the performance rather than draft.
Used.
And that's exactly what happened.
I mean, does Lando onto... I mean, dude, can he survive? Yes, he can.
Fine.
But can the Nexus Tower survive? That's a completely different story.
I think with the Nocturne out, they might have to peel back, but there's still 20 seconds on Solid Trickster. If they want to fight, they could take it now, but it looks like they're going to move away. Probably pick up this next break coming through.
That's absolutely true.
They say that, then there's an open inhibitor in the top lane, and all of a sudden they've got their eyes on that objective as Pickers Man. Able to look at the aggression from SCS. No! But he doesn't get tired! In the end, that's so cute. Actually, still going to do so much damage. I don't think it matters if Goth.
What can Salty do?
In this fight, they're also going quite low.
And that's it, that's game 1. Okay, so what started out as a little essay became more of like a full game review. That's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.